Help! Please help me. Just kidding, I'm not really in jail. I picked this up at a reclamation yard 2 years ago, and the wife said, "Oh, you'll never do anything with it. It'll just sit in the garage forever." Well, 2 years later, I'm about to prove her wrong. When I uploaded the video on this the other day, one of the comments was that it looked a little bit like a clock. And while I was doing it, at the time I thought, yeah, could be a clock. And at the minute, we don't have a wall clock in the house. So I thought, if I planned this, maybe I could create a clock and use up that civvy thing at the same time. Now all I'm thinking is, how many times can I say clock without misspeaking and saying
So I've got no idea what wood this sieve or sifter or whatever it's called is made from. All I know, it is filthy. So I'm giving it a good sand down. I use a wire brush. I end up using the orbital sander a little bit, and then to get in between the wires, I use my multi-tool with the sanding pad on it. And it comes out looking exactly the same. But just wait until you see the end result. I don't want to say it looks like walnut, but it looks like walnut. Next up comes that homemade circle jig again. I knocked this together for one-time use. I didn't think I'd be using it multiple times. This circle that I'm creating is going to sit inside of that civvy thing, and that's what's going to have kind of the clock face on it. The siev's just going to be decoration. Now I tend to follow Bourbon Moth's guide for cutting circles. With that circle jig I cut not a shallow pass, probably halfway through, maybe a bit more, and then I go around the edge with a jigsaw, not getting too close, and then I'll clean it all up on the router table using a flush cut bit. Now is this the only way to cut a circle? I very much doubt it. Is it the best way? I don't know, but Bourbon Moth said to do it and he's kinda done alright for himself. Once that was all trimmed up, I then just used the orbital sander. Now I am just rounding over those edges just slightly. I don't know why I wanted to do this, it just felt like the right thing to do.
So I just got back from walking the dog, hence why I'm soaked. Good old British weather. However, when I got back, this was sitting on the doorstep. These are a pair of clock mechanisms. Now, I've been a bit stuck until these arrived, but these were on Amazon. Hold on a minute. So anyway, these are on Amazon. You get 2 in the set, and they come with a range of different hands as well. So there's actually 5 sets of hands plus the 2 mechanisms. And what I need to be able to do is decide whether this needs routing in the back or I can just drill a hole through. Fortunately, I know the exact center because of my circle jig. So I'm going to play around with this for a minute and then I'll be back.
Turns out I didn't need to do any playing around. The mechanism itself had a bolt, if you like, that was pretty much the exact depth that I could just drill a hole straight through the middle. And I wouldn't need to route the mechanism housing into the back of it at all. Easy times. So now I'm making the segment, what do you call the little things on the clock? The hour markers, the 5-minute markers? I don't know, but I'm making those. I've got some 10mm stock here. It's cheap as chips and I've had it knocking about the garage for forever because you can't do anything with it unless you're building a clock.
Now I've got to pick them all up off the floor.
So all I've done with that 10mm stock is cut a 45 degree on the same side, and it's created kind of a trapezium shape. I don't know what the 3D word for a trapezium is, but that's what I've made. So I'm just sanding off any of the kind of splinters that are being created from the fact that I'm using a saw blade that's a year old and has never been replaced. Now I know, I burn everything. But like I said, the blowtorch is my favourite tool, and the wall that this clock's going to go on features stuff that I've burnt. In fact, I might take it off the wall and burn it some more. The more I use the blowtorch, the more I'm starting to really like that charred wood effect. So here I am fully charring them. In fact, I'm setting them on fire. I have to spray them down afterwards with water to put them out. I'm going for the full Shakopanamricha, I can't remember what the name is, but it's a Japanese way of treating wood. It actually waterproofs it and weatherproofs it. I'm also going to give that plywood back a bit of a blast because at the end of the day, it's reclaimed, it's not very pretty, it's a bit old and dusty and it's lost a lot of its natural colour. So I'm kind of just going around the edges, and I burned the middle as well, and I wasn't really sure I'd made the right decision at this point, but once you burnt something, you're stuck with it. Now I spend pretty much every project doubting my abilities as a woodworker. But there seems to be that every project I just have this little stroke of... Genius is strong, but little stroke of imagination, and I'm proud of myself. So I find the increments on the clock by drawing a straight line down the middle. I've got that centre point, so as long as the ruler crosses through that centre point, I can get my 12 and my 6. After that, I just use something square, lay the corner of that square on the centre point, line the other end of it up with the 12 and 6 that I've just created, and that will give me my 3 and my 9.
So now I've got my 12, 3, 6 and 9 marked on there literally by drawing a straight line with the centre point in the middle and then using a squarish block of wood. I can then do my increments, if you like. Now I've got this 30-degree block that I used on a table build. I cut this on the miter saw. That's 90. 90 divided by 3 is 30. I can use this scrap piece of wood again. Or I could just buy a protractor, like a normal person.
This worked surprisingly well. Who needs a protractor? I basically just lined the ruler with the marks I've already made, put the 30-degree block next to it, press it down so it doesn't wriggle, put the straight edge against it, and there you go, you've got one of your increments. Now I always go to the 12, 3, 6 or 9 because I know that they are perfectly true, rather than following the increments round like a clock would. The hands of a clock. Clock, clock, clock. I can say it. After that, it's as simple as just whacking some glue on these little bits that I've cut out and trying to stick them on straight. Now, I'd thought of a couple of ways of doing this, doing a few at a time and clamping them, but I haven't got many clamps. Then I thought maybe I could do a tiny bit of wood glue, tiny bit of super glue, but then they were so small and that would be really fiddly. So in the end, I just whacked some glue on and stuck them all on, and then I'll just weigh them down.
I just had a scary thought that I'd done the wrong amount. I know how many hours there are in a day, and I still had to count 3 times. Now, I'm not going to Brad nail this. Only an idiot would do that. Nail their clock to the table. I'm going to have to weigh it down though, and I need to be quick. I'm actually going out for tea tonight in like 20 minutes.
And that wasn't a lie. In fact, I had a 20-minute drive and I still needed a shower as well. So yeah, I was late.
Okay, glue up is done. Everything is solid. Now, I was in a rush yesterday because I had to go out, and a couple of them are a little bit wonky. They're in the right spot, they just don't point perfectly to centre. It's rustic, it's for me, I'm not selling this, so it doesn't matter too much to me. I'm feeling a bit ropey today though. It's definitely something I ate and not something I drank. Anyway, drill a hole for the clock mechanism, Danish oil, figure out how to attach it onto the meshy thing. Done. Of course it splintered.
I wasn't wrong either. There was really not much left to do, other than slather some Danish oil on, and you'll see in a minute I put some little L brackets on the back. The idea was to hang it on the mesh using those, but unfortunately that didn't really work because the mesh is so warped, probably from having a load of rocks in it. So in the end I might have just used some cable ties, but nobody will ever know, unless they take it off the wall, but they shouldn't.
Tell me that doesn't look pretty decent. Now I'm fully aware that when the oil actually soaks in, it's going to lose a lot of the depth. But still. Probably only took an hour all in all. Anyway, got to wait now.
Here's those L brackets I mentioned. I just screwed them onto the back and made sure they were level, as you can see by the line, and then I just used my brute strength to bend them over a little bit. The trouble is, because of the warp in the mesh, I could hook one on one side, but the bulge in the middle meant that the other one wouldn't hook on. But because they've got little holes in them, I was able to just use some small cable ties.
So here it is, the finished product. I'm very, very happy with it, and I cannot wait for the wife to come home and prove her wrong. I'm just so glad it worked out, otherwise I'd be really ticked off. I really like how I've done on the face of things. Anyway, don't leave this time, don't go.